There's lots of talk about culture, and yet right now, so much of it seems kind of distant and unclear and not all that helpful. But if you want some practical ideas for implementing culture and want to be inspired at the same time, you are in the right place. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you're listening to this podcast, you could have been with us live. And so if you want to be with us live in the future, you can do that from your favorite social channel. And we give you updates and let you know when those are going to be when you join one of our groups. You can do that on Facebook or LinkedIn. And if you go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn, you can join us and get inside ideas and updates and join us for those live episodes, and hope you'll do that. Today's episode is brought to you by our new book, The Long Distance Team, Designing a Team for Everyone's Success. You can learn more and get an excerpt from one of the chapters by going to longdistanceteambook.com. That's longdistanceteambook.com. And today I have a guest, as promised. Here he is. And let me introduce him, and then we will dive in. My guest today is Kyle McDowell. Kyle is a former corporate leader with 3 decades of experience at companies including United Health Group, CVS Health, and Bank of America. Now he is a speaker, leadership expert, and the author of Begin With We, 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. He has been featured in major national publications such as the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and Inc. Magazine. He holds a bachelor's degree from University of South Florida and an MBA from Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management. He lives in Tampa, and today he is our guest. Kyle, welcome.
Glad so you're here, sir. Yeah, thanks for having me, Kevin. Good to be here.
So we've got this book, Begin With We. We're going to get into that in a second. But what led, I sort of gave the high-level overview in the introduction, but what led you to here? What led you to this work and being with us today?
Yeah, I think the journey for me that culminated in the publishing of the book started back in probably 2016 when I assumed a leadership role, and I had an opportunity to lead in a way that I had never been led. I had the autonomy, was given the autonomy to lead differently, and I'd made a promise to myself going into that role that I was going to do things differently. And I led with principles. It's the first time in my entire leadership career where I drew a line in the sand, not only for how the team should expect me to behave, but how I would expect them to behave as well. So it was kind of that win-win for both sides. Fast forward 7 years later, the principles that I introduced at that organization are still essentially the cultural manifesto. I left that organization in 2019, so 3 or 4 years later, and I found myself at a crossroads. I had left that firm called Maximus. I'd also left CVS Health, which you had just mentioned, and I was at a crossroads. Should I go back into corporate America and drive another cultural transformation, which turns out I'm pretty good at and had a lot of experience doing, or should I take these principles and do my very best to evangelize them as wide and as far as I could to try to have a greater impact? When you introduced me earlier, you talked about having an impact, and it was really that compelled me to write the book. And I felt it was my chance to get these principle-based leadership and have a much bigger impact. And that's why we're here. And I have to add, within a couple of weeks of the book being published, it became a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller, which is not a kudos to me. It tells me that there is a hunger in the workplace for culture change like this.
And we're going to get to what that looks like and what that means in a minute. But one of the things that you say is that you purport that corporate America is broken. Yeah. And so I'd like you to talk about that's a pretty strong statement. What do you mean by that?
So, Kevin, I would imagine you and many of your listeners and some of the viewers today, we all entered the workforce with optimism, excitement, maybe a bit of naivete. And at least my experience, I won't speak for others, but I think it's a pretty consistent experience, at least I hear it in my work now, is throughout our journeys in in corporate America, we find ourselves less engaged. The term apathy becomes much more common in our daily vernacular. The bureaucracy weighs on us, and a degree of inauthenticity becomes so pervasive. I mean, and think about it. The way that we behave and speak outside of work, as an example, is usually pretty different than how we behave inside the workplace. Now, I'm not naive. There are reasons for that. We have to maintain a professional profile. But when's the last time you came home from work and asked your significant other how he or she did on their deliverables? Like we have a different vocabulary. So I found myself just kind of apathetic. And to me, if you want to bring the best out of people, authenticity is absolutely critical, and relatability. And if I'm not who I purport to be, if I behave in a way other than what's natural and authentic to me, I can't expect those around me to rally behind me, and I can't expect followership. So I feel like, at least it's been my experience, over time, the more people climb, or the higher they climb throughout their career journey, and they matriculate through corporate America, they lose that optimism, they lose that energy, and ultimately become kind of apathetic and just part of this big engine, and they lose sight of the purpose and the impact they really could have.
So I opened the conversation by saying that culture is a word that gets used a lot and maybe misused, and I said that it's distant. The concept is distant and unclear. In the subtitle of the book, you say we're going to talk about creating a culture of excellence, and so make those more than just words. What do you mean when you say to create a culture of excellence?
Yeah, and candidly, man, I don't even like using the word culture very often, because it's become this nebular term that is hard for people to identify with. It's kind of like a mission statement. Looks good on a wall, but what does it really mean? What does it mean? How does it compel me to be better and do more? So when I talk about a culture of excellence, for me, the premise of the culture of excellence is establishing guiding principles by which all of us will behave. From the newest intern to the CEO in the corner office, if we as a team, as a unit, as an organization can align around principles, and let me just be really clear, principle is by definition a fundamental truth. It's something that we hold to be true. And as a unit or an organization or a team, if we can align around these truths, excellence must follow. Why? Because we're all on the same page. We subscribe to these truths. We understand the environment that we're in. And if we live these principles every single day, and we'll get more into those hopefully throughout the conversation, it removes any ambiguity. And the comment you made earlier, I think, is so true, that the word culture gets thrown around. You can Google and find hundreds of thousands of articles and books that talk about culture transformation, but they're usually so what I call unicorns and rainbows, kind of pie in the sky type thing, to which the average worker, the average employee, has a hard time relating. The principles, on the other hand, if they're fundamental truths, they're so easily to relate to, and they now become our guideposts, kind of our guardrails for how we operate every day.
All right. So we think about culture as the way we do things around here. And you're saying if we build it on principle, fundamental truths, then we, by definition, ipso facto, will move toward excellence
Bingo.
in the way we do things around here, which makes sense to me. So you have 10 principles. They all start with the word we, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But how did you develop or codify those 10 principles?
Man, I wish I had some sexy story to share with you. I don't. The wheeze came to me the night before I was to meet with the top 40 or 50 leaders inside the organization that I mentioned earlier that I just joined. I made myself that promise that I was going to lead differently. Well, be careful what you wish for, because the night before I was to meet with that group, Kevin, I had no idea what I was going to say. I'll never forget.
This sounds like Jerry Maguire, like he's only going to say, so he writes this manifesto. Anyway, go ahead.
Actually, I take that as a compliment. There was a theme to that the very next day. So I'm in my hotel room.
Now you got a story. Now you got a new way to talk about it. I had my Jerry Maguire moment. Anyway, go ahead.
Who's coming with me? I was in my hotel room in Lawrence, Kansas the night before. I was still wearing the suit that I had on that day. I'm in bed, laptop in lap. And I thought, I've got to communicate.
That's almost too much information. Like, if we get into bed, you could probably take off the suit, but that's okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I think it's important to add the suit was on, right? I think that makes the story PG enough to share.
I mean, it doesn't matter. That's
right. So anyway, man, I'm thinking to myself, I've got to put a deck together, and I want to share with this team tomorrow. Most importantly, I wanted to share expectations. I wanted to set expectations, which is what the new leader always does, right? But I wanted to approach it slightly differently. I wanted to share these expectations in very black and white form. By the way, it wasn't an accident. The very first presentation and every speech I've given since then, the slides are always in black and white. It's not negotiable. These are not gray. But I needed the team to understand these were my expectations of them. But I think much more importantly, the exact same expectations should be held of me. And it's their obligation to call me out if I'm not living these expectations. So an hour and a half, 2 hours goes by, and I look down at my laptop and I've got something that I felt was solid, something that I could share. And Kevin, there was no pre-planning. I didn't set out to do this. I had 10 sentences in front of me. They all begin with the word we. Because I had learned leading up to that day, the leader prior to me had a very kind of, I mean, I'll be honest, he was a me-oriented fella. He was someone that was really concerned about his career trajectory, what was in it for him, a very classic cliche kind of boss profile. And I knew if I had stepped out there the next morning and talked about what I was going to do, what I had done in my past, and how I was going to lead this team to greatness or to excellence, I'd be met with a lot of skepticism. So I looked down at these 10 sentences. They all started with the word we. I'm not that creative, so I have the 10 we's. And the very next morning, I went out in front of that on stage and talked to the folks and shared these principles. And this is my Jerry Maguire moment, as you call it. I would say 50% of the people in the audience were very eager and optimistic that this new guy, Kyle, was bringing this approach. I would say a quarter of the group was on the fence, and there was another quarter that was really skeptical. Exactly. Kevin, so much so I love telling the story because I'm actually good buddies with the fellow that did this. He admitted later that evening, he Googled the 10 we's. Couldn't find anything, of course, because I just created them the night before. He went so far as to ask for my presentation because he wanted to check the properties of the PowerPoint to see if I was the creator of the file. So that's how skeptical we're talking. He was so in disbelief that this new guy brought this in the next day. Well, like I said, fast forward several years later, the 10 we's are still the guiding principles for that organization and many others by this point, because I've shared the we's with thousands of people, either on stage or via the book.
So we're going to get into 10. We don't have time to unpack the 10, everybody. I picked a couple that we're going to chat about that Kyle does not know which ones I picked. So we're going to do that. Here's we go. But I have to tell you all, and I meant to have it here, but again, I'm not in my normal location. But I have been finishing reading a book that I believe is called The Secret Life of Pronouns. I believe is actually the title. Wow. And so I'm drawn to the word we. I'm drawn to thinking about the pronouns we use matter, as it turns out, a lot. So we're going to dive into some of these we's. We number one, it's the perfect place to start. And so we number one is we do the right thing always. So I'm just going to put a few of these up and I just sort of like talk to us about what that means in real life, right? Because we started out by saying we want this to be practical. So give us a couple of things about, so what does it mean and how does it look when we're doing it?
Yeah, well, first of all, hopefully it's not very confrontational, right? It's if you can't abide or subscribe to doing the right thing. By the way, there's a second sentence, which is one word for that we, and it's always. We do the right thing always. In corporate America, we find ourselves in situations where the right thing can be subjective. And our decision for today could be different than our decision for the same scenario a week later. And I think that creates inconsistency, obviously, which tells the team that the right thing is negotiable, and that should not be the case. And in the book, I talk about the kind of the filter to use when trying to decide upon the right thing is, first of all, is it right for the company? And some people might say, well, that's not very employee friendly. Well, if there's no company, there are no employees. So we've got to look through that lens first. Is are we making a decision that the company can stand behind? Second is, are we doing the right thing for our client? And if the answer is yes, great. Let's move on. We're on to something. And lastly, but almost as equally as important, is the crew, the company, the client, and the crew. So when I make a decision to do the right thing, or I aspire to do the right thing, if I don't check one of those three boxes, hopefully all three of them, but reality says that doesn't always happen, then I need to keep looking. For example, if the right thing involves doing something that benefits me, it ain't the right thing. It's got to be we oriented, and those three cohorts are the we. And by the way, I was very purposeful that this we is the first we, because everything behind it would be a house of cards if we didn't say right out of the gate, our fundamental truth, our first fundamental truth is doing the right thing.
Yeah, do the right thing always, and in the context of that we, right? It's all of us thinking about that in relationship and in context of
Yes.
all of us, and so
Yes.
that's really good.
Well
The
said.
fourth one um, is, and I'll put it on the screen for those who are watching here just a second. But the fourth one strikes me as one that people might not initially think would be that important. Of course, we do this, and yet I think you and I would both agree that not always. The fourth we number four is we take action,
Love it.
and we ought to think, well, of course we all take action, but often we don't. Talk about that one a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it. So inside corporate America, especially bigger organizations, if you ask someone in confidence, hey, tell me what's really going on the production floor. Tell me something that maybe you don't want the boss to hear. There'll be a laundry list of things. And those things are the items of improvement that are required to be addressed. We must address them if we want excellence. So taking action is really another way of saying, if you see something, do something. Now, that doesn't mean you're a cowboy and you go out and you just, take over a domain or do some things that in an area that for which you have no responsibility. It is
Because
calling
it's
out.
we, not
That's
me,
right.
right?
That's exactly right. We can't fix what we don't know is broken. We can't improve upon things that we don't know need improving. So taking action is recognizing it and working with the person or group that is responsible or has the ownership of that area. But what we can't do is go, yeah, that's broken, and keep moving. One quick story. I spent a lot of time inside call centers. My entire career mostly has been leading big service organizations. And without fail, you sit down next to a call center representative and you're kind of shadowing with them and they're walking you through all the screens and the work that they do. And if you ask a question, so why'd you do that? Why'd you go that way? Without fail, and almost every time I've ever done this, the person will lean over and say, they tell us to do it this way, but actually I do it this way because it's a lot quicker. It works out better this way. That is ripe for action. We have people doing something that is not what we've asked them to do. They've identified a better way to do it. The action to be taken is to raise your hand and say, Kyle, there's a better way
Here's
to
a new
do this.
approach.
That's right. That's right. Take action. Because the longer we look the other way, we're creating that apathetic environment. And you know this, Kevin. When people stop raising their hand that there's a problem or an opportunity for us to address, we're dead. We're dead. So we want people to recognize the opportunities and call them out. That's the action we're talking about.
I'm reminded. I was reminded as I read it, and I'm reminded as I listened to you, thinking about Tom Peters, who I had the pleasure to have on the show twice. We'll put those links in the show notes. And Tom is most famous probably for his first book, In Search of Excellence, where they talk about having a bias for action, right? And you're saying the same thing here. But I really like this idea that we're not going off and being a cowboy, I think is the word you used.
Yeah.
Because it's back to being about us or we and not just about me. So it takes us back to that first one, doing the right thing always. Next one I have is number 7, another one of my favorites, because I believe that busy is the most dangerous 4-letter word in the English language. Number 7 is we measure ourselves by outcomes, not activity. And of course, busy is about activity and not outcomes. So talk to us about this one and how do we play this one out in our workplaces on our
teams? This is one that's really personal to me because I've worked in, as you mentioned at the top, some really big companies, and had found myself during that time, but as well as in my work now, working with executives and managers on making them and helping them become their very best. I get this sense, and I hear it all the time. People conflate busy with productive, and they equate 13 meetings on a calendar to being a successful, productive day. And we've got to shift the narrative from busy to outcomes. Kevin, I'm really happy that my Uber driver puts gasoline in the car before he picks me up. I really appreciate that. That is an activity, though, required to deliver the outcome. We don't pay the Uber driver to go get the gas. It comes with the territory. So in corporate America, when we have a day full of meetings, and many of us, including me, I used to wear it like a badge of honor. I was booked straight, triple booked, double booked, whatever the expression is, from this time to this time, as if it's a badge of honor. But my challenge to those in that scenario is, can you point to an outcome that is absolutely driven or impacted by all of these meetings? I talk about it in the book. It's called the meeting monolith. We have a meeting to talk about a meeting. We schedule a meeting to talk about the meeting that we're going to schedule. It's meeting overload, but it needs to be outcome overload. So I tell my teams today, and in my consulting practice, if you can't draw a straight line from your activity to an agreed upon outcome, whether it's on your performance evaluation or something you just know must get done, you must question, why am I doing this? You talked about culture earlier, and I think this is a huge component and something that I really urge folks to do. And it sounds silly, but just think, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? And is it driving an outcome for which I'm committed? And if the answer is no, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it?
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that since you're using meetings as our example, which is a perfectly good thing to use as our example, that we shouldn't even be having a meeting if we don't know what the desired outcome of this meeting is. Like, what's the outcome that we're reaching for? Because then we know, first of all, we know if we achieved it. And number two, we know when we're done, because we've all been in the meeting that's still going on. Well, time's not up yet, but it doesn't appear that there's anything else that needs to be accomplished because we've reached what we needed to reach.
What's the magic behind 30 minutes or 60 minutes? Why do all, why not a 15-minute meeting? Why do we need a meeting at all? How about picking up the phone and calling the person from whom you need an answer? So I think we lean on those as a crutch. We try to be ultra inclusive and get all the right parties in a room. And sometimes we just need to pick up the phone and get the answer we need and move on. There was a study out by, I think it was Korn Ferry. I may misattribute that, but there was a study recently or within the last year that said north of 60% of respondents indicated that they attend a meeting even if they know it will add no value to their workday. What does that tell you?
Because we're supposed to, right? That's like what we do.
That's right. Yeah.
And besides, then we can say we were double booked, Kyle.
Good, right?
So we've talked about 3 of the 10 we's, and we don't have time to talk about all of them, but I want you to pick one more. And you can either pick the one that you feel like is you feel led to talk about now, or you could say, hey, this is the one I think that people maybe miss the most often. Take your however you want to choose it. But what's one more of the we's that you'd like to share?
So, Kevin, my favorite we also happens to be one of the most difficult to embrace, but can also be the most profound and most transformative when embraced. And that's we number 8. We challenge each other. So in nearly every corporate environment, actually in most team environments, including sports, there's usually only one person who is authorized or quote unquote allowed to challenge the group, and that's the boss. What a shame. So if I'm on a team of 15, or I lead a team of 15, for example, I don't have all the answers. Therefore, I should not be the only one allowed to issue challenges. When we talk about issuing challenges, there are a couple of rules though, because we can't have chaos. Every challenge must be issued with a filter of data or experience. Otherwise, it's your opinion, and opinion sometimes will get us in trouble. If I have data that says the path that we're traveling down or the decision we're about to make, this data, Kyle, will help us make a decision that is more sound. Or, for example, we're deciding on a new product implementation. If someone on the team has experience with a similar type of deployment or implementation, we should damn well listen to what they have to say. They've been down this path before. Right. And lastly, the challenge is not relegated to just, as I mentioned, the boss or the coach down to the team. Peers must challenge teams. A quick example. Yeah. Exactly right. Every single direction, Kevin, because I'll tell you how this works and what the beauty that comes from it. So when I rolled out the 10 we's, my staff meetings, just like most people in corporate America, staff meetings were essentially readouts. I'd sit at the end of the table. People on my team around the table would go through their department updates. I would ask a few questions. Meanwhile, everyone else in the room is heads down on their phone, or maybe they're buried in their laptop. When you open up challenges for the whole team to be allowed and frankly obligated to issue, now you have other people paying attention. And when one person on the team is giving their update, someone else on the team may hear something and go, whoa, that doesn't make sense to me. Right. And you're now obligated to offer that challenge. The beauty of all of this is you get more thoughts on the table, and a meritocracy of sorts starts to develop, because we want the best ideas, not the best person on the table. We want the best ideas. And the only way to get that is to get those experiences. Now, you asked for one, but I must give two, because without number 9, we embrace challenge. We challenge each other, promotes anarchy. It's chaos. So we've got to have another we in there that says, if a challenge comes my way and it's grounded in data or experience, I need to listen to this challenge because there's an opportunity for me to be better. But also, if these are our fundamental truths, I know the person asking the challenge is coming from a good place. So I need to embrace that.
Yeah, but that takes us back to number one. Like, I have to assume that that person is challenging because it matters to company, client, crew. Like,
Bingo.
in other words, there's good intention in the challenge, right? And so we it's easy to embrace it if we understand the intention behind it. It's harder to embrace if we're not so sure about that.
Yeah, and it also creates a safe space, right? If we know that we're in an environment where challenges are not only accepted, they're encouraged, the mental kind of engine gets rolling for people, and they know, wow, my idea can be heard here. I may be onto something. The last thing we ever want to be is in a situation where there's an "I told you so." Someone on the team says, "Yeah, I thought that was going to happen a month ago." Unacceptable. You got to get that challenge out now.
It may not you may it's easy to say that now, but why didn't you talk about it before so we could have perhaps avoided
Absolutely.
this? We are talking with Kyle McDowell, the author of the book Begin With We: 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. We have talked about some of the principles, some of the we's, but not all of them. You're going to need to get a copy of the book so you can get the rest. So, Kyle, before we finish, I got a couple other questions for you
Yeah.
before we go,
Mhm.
and sort of shifting gears as we wind down. And the first one is, so it's clear, like most guests that I have here, it's quite clear that you're passionate about your work, you care about what you're doing, and yet this isn't your whole life. What do you do for fun, Kyle?
I work a lot. And that sounds like a cliche answer, but the truth is, this is fun for me. I've dedicated this kind of second chapter of my professional career to helping leaders be their best, to helping organizations be much more high functioning and less toxic. So it's fun for me. When I'm not focused on the evangelizing the principles and growing my business, I'm into fitness. I like to be very active. I'm an outdoorsy type guy. And the cliche answer, but it's true for me, is hanging out with my friends and family, most notably my wife. I'm lucky to say I just got married about 2 months ago, so a lot of good times
Well,
with
she
some good
better
people.
make this list, because if she watches this, and Kyle, like, if you, she should. Let me give you some tips.
Hit
She
me.
needs to go on the front of the list the next time this gets asked.
Edit
Listen,
that out for me, Kevin, please.
there you go. I will. There'll be no editing out,
No
everybody.
chance,
So
right?
you
All
can
right,
like
fair
keep
enough.
her here, honey. Watch all these listen to all these podcasts I was on,
Hey,
right?
hey, Kevin, we
So
number 5, we own our mistakes.
there you go.
Owning it.
So one of the things that I'm confident is true of you is that you are a reader, and
I
so I'm
am.
curious what you're reading or what you've recently read that you might share with us.
Well, I just finished, and it's the second time reading it. My second time reading it is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but written nearly 2,000 years ago by one of the most powerful men in the known world, Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who was on the battlefield by day, but at night he wrote was what amounts to be his journal. He had no intention of it ever being published, and the things that he, as the most powerful man in the world, talked about being humble, the Stoic philosophy in general. And there's a quote I'm glad you asked this. There's a quote that stuck with me from the book is, um, "If I do good that benefits man, I benefit." And I take that into my leadership. If we can make people around us be their best, there's no way we don't benefit as well. Marcus Aurelius Meditations, it's a must read. As I mentioned, it's my second time. I just finished it this morning. Actually, it's right over my shoulder. I just finished it this morning, the second time.
There you go, Marcus Aurelius Meditations, everyone. So the question you've been most wanting me to ask all along, you've been very gracious in answering the things that we've talked about, but you probably want people to know where they can find you, connect with you, get a book. Where do you want to point people, Kyle? I'll
I,
hold the
I
book.
would.
Phil's watching. I'll hold the book up again. Where do you want to point people?
So I can be found everywhere, every social media platform, at Kyle McDowell Inc. The book is Begin With We, and the website is kylemcdowellinc.com. So any social platform is where you'll find me. I'm all over.
All right, beautiful. So now I have a question for all of you. And if you've been with me before, you know what question I'm going to ask. It's the one I ask every single episode. And it's not for Kyle, It's for you. And the question is, now what? What did you take from this that not something that you found interesting, but an action that you will take as a result? We promised from the start that we would share with you practical ideas. So you heard very specific things about what it looks like to take action, what it looks like to measure ourselves by outcomes and not activity. And could go on and on. The question is, what did you take from this that you're going to go act on right now? Hopefully it's to, among other things, to buy a copy of the book, Begin with We. And if you don't take some action from what we've just done, there were probably better ways to be entertained than Kyle and I. I mean, hopefully we weren't that bad, but the reality is action is what will make the difference for you. So number 4 is we take action. I hope that you will take action on something that you took from this episode. And when you do, it will help you get better results for you and your team. Kyle, thanks so much for being here. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure's mine, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
And everybody, if you enjoyed this, tell someone to come and listen to it or watch it. If you are listening to us on whatever platform you're on, whether it's liking or subscribing or whatever it is that you do, wherever you are, I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll rate us and rank us and refer us and come back for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everybody.